December 2nd, 1967. Skies over Hanoi. A squadron of American F-4 Phantoms, the deadliest fighters on Earth, $2.5 million per airframe, state-of-the-art radar, 6 air-to-air missiles strapped under each wing. Facing them, aging Soviet MiG-21S, 1/8 the cost, primitive radar, 2 missiles, pilots with a sliver of the training hours. By every measurable metric, this should be a slaughter. It isn't. Vietnamese aviators are dropping Phantoms out of the sky with tactics the Pentagon cannot decode. Strike from beneath, vanish into cloud cover, gone before the Americans even complete a turn. And threading through the center of all of it, one man. Nguyen Van Kock, son of a rice farmer, 23 years old. Before 1967 ends, he will destroy 9 American aircraft. That number makes him the top-scoring fighter ace of the entire Vietnam War. How does a pilot flying obsolete hardware bring the world's supreme air force to its knees? What strategies did the Vietnamese unlock that American commanders had no answer for? And how did these aerial engagements reshape dogfighting doctrine for generations? Nguyen Van Kock entered the world in 1944 in Nam Dinh Province, 90 kilometers southeast of Hanoi. His father tended rice paddies. His mother kept chickens. No one in the family had ever stood beside an airplane. In 1963, North Vietnam opened recruitment for its air force. He was 19. He signed up, not out of ideology. He wanted to feel a cockpit around him. 500 young men applied, 30 slots existed. He earned one. By 1964, he was boarding a transport to the Soviet Union, a classified training base near Chkalovsky. This was the forge where North Vietnamese aviators learned the MiG-21. The curriculum was merciless. The MiG-21 was quick, nimble, and absolutely unforgiving. Top speed, 2,100 kilometers per hour. Combat radius, 480 kilometers. Once a dogfight started, you had 15 minutes of fuel. After that, you either landed or you crashed. Soviet instructors drilled one principle into every student. Extended engagements against American jets are suicide. Their radar is sharper. Their missiles are deadlier. Their fuel tanks are deeper. So you hit first, then you disappear. By late 1965, he touched down in North Vietnam again. His total stick time, 120 hours. American pilots rotating into the theater carried more than 500. That gap meant nothing to him. He had a method, and he was about to test it against the largest air power the world had ever assembled. The F-4 Phantom II was an engineering beast. McDonnell Douglas conceived it in the late 1950s for a singular purpose: intercept and annihilate Soviet bombers before they reached American soil. It broke Mach 2. It punched through 18,000 meters of altitude in under 2 minutes. Each airframe ran $2.5 million, roughly $23 million in modern currency. Its AN/APQ-72 radar could paint targets at 45 kilometers. 6 AIM-7 Sparrow missiles hung from its pylons, built to acquire and kill enemy aircraft beyond visual range. The target pilot would be dead before he ever knew a lock existed. A $23 million weapons platform that, on specifications alone, could not be beaten. Except for one catastrophic design choice: no cannon. The engineers at McDonnell Douglas had decided that close-range combat was a relic. The future belonged to long-distance missile kills. Guns were dead weight. That assumption was fatally wrong. When the F-4 Phantom deployed to Vietnam in 1965, American brass radiated confidence. North Vietnam's entire air force numbered perhaps 40 planes, mostly aging MiG-17S, a few newer MiG-21S scattered among them. The US fielded hundreds of Phantoms, backed by the finest trained aviators alive. Total air dominance was expected within months. Reality looked nothing like the briefing. Combat over Vietnam didn't unfold at 45 kilometers of clean separation. It erupted inside cloud banks at treetop altitude, in tight-range ambushes where radar returns dissolved into noise and missiles refused to track. In that arena, the F-4 Phantom wasn't untouchable. It was exposed. Americans labeled the Vietnamese approach hit and run. The Vietnamese had a different name: guerrilla air warfare. The mechanics were elegant. American strike packages crossing into North Vietnamese airspace followed repeatable flight corridors. Formations of F-105 Thunder Chiefs, laden with ordnance, sluggish under the weight, would push north from Thai airfields. F-4 Phantoms would fly escort, holding formation above and behind. The Americans carried one decisive edge: airborne radar. That radar could spot enemy aircraft up to 45 kilometers out. Plenty of warning to reposition and engage. But the system had blind spots. Low-altitude targets vanished into ground clutter. Clouds blocked the signal entirely. The North Vietnamese intended to exploit both weaknesses. Ground control made the whole strategy possible. Across the country, the North Vietnamese erected a web of early warning radar stations, built under Soviet guidance. These stations tracked American formations the instant they crossed into North Vietnamese airspace. Every reading fed into a central command post in Hanoi. Codename Bison. Bison controlled everything: when to scramble the MiGs, what altitude to hold, what vector to approach from. MiG pilots didn't decide, they obeyed. The plan was precise. MiG-21s would launch and immediately drop to low altitude, 500 meters above the ground, sometimes lower. Radars dark, radio silent, invisible to American detection systems. The MiG-21 was tiny. At low altitude on American radar, it registered as ground clutter. Bison would vector the MiGs into attack position using ground-based radar. The fighters would tuck behind cloud banks or hillsides, waiting. Above them, American pilots would scan clear screens and feel safe. Then Bison's order would crackle through. Quote, 0. The MiGs would haul back on the stick, afterburners shrieking. They punched through the clouds directly beneath the American formation. Inside that radar blind spot, the world's most advanced fighter jet was naked. The F-4's close-range problem was fatal. American AIM-7 Sparrow missiles needed time to acquire a lock. In a snap ambush, that time didn't exist. The MiG-21's K-13 Atoll missile had an effective range of just 3 kilometers, but needed only 2 seconds to lock on. Fire. Dive back into the clouds. Vanish before the Americans could process what happened. Total engagement window, 60 to 90 seconds. On paper, brilliant. But combat isn't paper. Could a farmer's son with 120 hours of flight time pull this off against the best-trained pilots on Earth? November 28, 1966, 2:14 p.m., Gia Lam Airfield, Hanoi. Nguyen Van Kok has been a combat pilot for 18 months. 47 sorties. He squeezed the trigger in anger exactly 3 times. Never hit a thing. Today, he watches the tactic prove itself for the first time. The alarm blares. American strike package inbound. 12 F-105 Thunder Chiefs with 4 F-4 Phantom escorts, bearing north toward the Paul Duma Bridge, a critical supply artery the Americans have been hammering for weeks. He sprints to his MiG-21. But today, he's not the primary shooter. His flight leader is Nguyen Duy Q, a senior pilot with 3 years of combat under his belt. COC is the wingman. His job, hold Q's wing, scan for threats, absorb everything. Pre-flight checks run fast. Fuel full. 2 K-13 Atolls loaded on the rails. Cannon, 60 rounds. Radio functioning. He straps in. Engine start. The Tumansky R-11 turbojet screams to life. Ground control, Bison, cuts through his headset. 4 aircraft take off immediately. Heading 180. Altitude 500 meters. Radar off. He doesn't question it. He never does. The ground controllers hold the complete picture. He sees only what fills his canopy. They launch. Q leads. Koch follows 2 seconds behind. They skim low over rice paddies and villages. American radar is hunting at medium and high altitude. Down here, nothing exists. Bison's voice again. American formation bearing 045. Distance 40 kilometers. Altitude 6,000 meters. Maintain current heading. He glances at his fuel gauge. 12 minutes. Maybe. Then he has to turn back. The MiG-21 was never built for endurance. Declassified Soviet technical manuals put the aircraft's internal fuel capacity at roughly 45 minutes under normal flight conditions. In combat, afterburner lit, that collapsed to 15 minutes or less. American pilots knew this. If they could keep a MiG locked in a dogfight beyond 10 minutes, it would burn through its fuel, forced to break off or fall from the sky. But the Vietnamese had no intention of staying that long. Target at 20 kilometers. Begin climb on afterburner. Q shoves the throttle forward first. He follows. The afterburner ignites. The MiG-21 rockets upward at more than 200 meters per second. G-forces crush them into their ejection seats. Peripheral vision collapses. Every breath becomes a fight. 5 seconds pass. They punch through the cloud layer at 5,500 meters. And there, right there, 4 F-4 Phantoms, 800 meters ahead, slightly higher. Loose formation, eyes scanning forward and above, not below. Q's targeting system locks the nearest Phantom. A clean, steady tone fills his headset. That American pilot has no idea they exist. A 1984 US Air Force study on Vietnam air combat found that in 68% of MiG ambush encounters, American crews received 0 radar warning before the strike. The MiGs flew too close, too low, too fast for the F-4's radar to pick them up in time. Q doesn't wait. He squeezes the trigger. The K-13 Atoll missile drops from its rail, ignites, and tears toward the F-4's exhaust trail. The American pilot spots it. Far too late. He yanks left, but the missile is already closing. The F-4 detonates. He watches the whole thing unfold, the fireball blooming, wreckage tumbling through open air. The remaining 3 Phantoms scatter, heads swiveling, hunting the threat. But Q is already gone. Throttle chopped, rolling inverted, nose down, swallowed by the clouds below. He follows, glued to Q's wing. The 3 Phantoms wheel back toward the ambush point. By the time they search for a lock, nothing. Empty sky. Total time above the clouds, 12 seconds. They level off at 500 meters, heading south. Fuel gauge flashing red. 4 minutes of flight remaining. Gia Lam airfield sits 35 kilometers away. They touch down with 90 seconds of fuel left in the tanks. Ground crew is already waiting on the tarmac. They've been monitoring the radio chatter. 1 kill confirmed. An F-4 Phantom destroyed. Q steps out of his cockpit. Calm, measured, professional. This isn't his first. He climbs from his own aircraft. His hands won't stop trembling. His flight suit is drenched through. Not fear, adrenaline. The raw, electric realization that the tactic actually works. He never fired a round. He was the wingman, watching, absorbing. But he understood with perfect clarity. His turn was coming. That evening, Radio Hanoi broadcasts the shootdown. No names mentioned. But inside the Pentagon, analysts are scrambling to understand what just happened. Declassified US military records reveal that between September and December 1966, American forces lost 43 aircraft over North Vietnam. 8 of those confirmed MiG kills. The loss rate was climbing and accelerating. North Vietnamese MiG tactics were delivering results. Nguyen Van Kock had just witnessed the proof with his own eyes. The Americans weren't going to accept this quietly. After watching MiG-21s successfully ambush their formations through November and December 1966, US military analysts began dissecting the pattern. The MiGs struck when F-4 Phantoms were tied to bomber escort duty, distracted, shielding the slower F-105 Thunder Chiefs. but they refused to engage pure F-4 fighter sweeps carrying no secondary mission. Colonel Robin Olds recognized the opening. Olds was a World War II ace, 13 confirmed kills against Luftwaffe fighters, 44 years old, aggressive, growing more frustrated by the week. He'd been flying fighter sweeps over North Vietnam for months. The MiGs wouldn't come up to meet him, so he decided to force their hand. Operation Bolo. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. F-4 Phantoms would masquerade as F-105 bombers. Identical flight paths, identical altitudes, identical radio frequencies, identical electronic signatures. North Vietnamese ground controllers would track what appeared to be a standard bombing run, slow, vulnerable, ripe for interception. But when the MiGs rose to attack, they'd find the finest fighter pilots in the US Air Force already in position. January 2, 1967, 2:45 p.m., Olds leads 28 F-4 Phantoms toward Hanoi. They cruise at 4,500 meters, standard altitude for F-105 strike packages. They transmit F-105 call signs. They trace the exact corridors bombers always fly. Down below, North Vietnamese radar operators watch the formation crawl across their screens. Every signature reads like a standard American bombing run. The response is automatic. Scramble the MiGs. 16 MiG-21S launch from Phuc Yen and Gia Lam airfields. North Vietnam's sharpest pilots are among them. They surge toward intercept altitude, expecting sluggish, bomb-heavy aircraft guarded by distracted escorts. What they find instead is Robin Olds and 28 F-4s carrying a single objective: kill MiGs. The Vietnamese recognize the trap within seconds. Too late. Olds already owns altitude, speed, and positioning. The MiGs attempt their signature hit and run. Climb, fire, dive away. No escape route exists. Phantoms fill every vector. What follows lasts exactly 12 minutes. Olds shoots first. His AIM-7 Sparrow missile locks a MiG-21 and tears it apart at medium range. His wingman claims another, then another. Vietnamese pilots break formation, clawing toward cloud cover. But Americans occupy every quadrant of sky. 7 MiG-21S destroyed. American losses, 0. Declassified US Air Force after-action reports confirm Operation Bolo eliminated nearly half of North Vietnam's operational MiG-21 fleet in one engagement. It stands as the most successful air-to-air operation of the entire Vietnam War, a devastating strike against the North Vietnamese Air Force, but not a killing blow, because Nguyen Van Kock was absent. He'd been scheduled to fly that day. His MiG-21 sat fueled, armed, and waiting on the Gia Lam tarmac. Minutes before takeoff, ground control redirected him to a different patrol sector. Some historians call it luck, others believe Vietnamese controllers sensed something wrong. The American formation was too clean, too synchronized. Whatever the explanation, Seo never left the ground. He survived. Operation Bolo forced North Vietnam to evolve. Caution replaced aggression. Large formations against obvious targets, gone. They waited now. Perfect opportunities only. Moments when American defenses stretched thin or lost focus. Same tactic, far more selective execution, far more patience. The 921st Fighter Regiment stood down for 3 months, retraining, recovering. The Pentagon declared Operation Bolo a decisive victory. The MiG threat neutralized. But had it truly ended? Or had the Vietnamese simply learned discipline? And when they returned to the sky, what then? April 30th, 1967 would deliver the answer. April 30th, 1967, 2:14 p.m., Gia Lam Airfield, Hanoi. 3 months since Bolo. And the 921st Fighter Regiment is operational again. The alarm cuts through the airfield. American strike package inbound. Nguyen Van Kock sprints to his MiG-21, But his role has changed. He's number 2 in a 4-ship formation now. His own target, his own kill. They launch. Low altitude, clouds shielding them. Ground control vectors them into position. Target, 20 kilometers. Begin climb. Afterburner. He pulls back on the stick, punches through cloud cover at 5,500 meters. 4 F-4 Phantoms ahead. He locks the second aircraft. Fires. The F-4 detonates. He rolls and dives back into the clouds. Total exposure, 12 seconds. On the ground, the crew is already waiting. 2 kills confirmed. Nguyen Duy Q scored the other. But this time, Kok pulled the trigger himself. That evening, Radio Hanoi broadcasts his name, the farmer's son from Nam Dinh, his first kill. Between April and December 1967, Nguyen Van Kok flew 23 additional combat missions. October 3rd, kill number 2, an F-4D. October 7th, kill number 3, an F-105. November 18th, kills 4 and 5. 2 F-105s in a single sortie, ace status. His face appeared on propaganda posters. Radio broadcasts named him Defender of the Sky. School children memorized his name. The Americans were memorizing it too. Declassified CIA reports reveal that US analysts had begun tracking individual North Vietnamese pilots. Kok's call sign, Red 3107, surfaced again and again in after-action reports. He became a priority target. American pilots received specific briefings. If you spot a MiG-21 rocketing vertical out of cloud cover, guns blazing at point-blank range, gone before you can react, that's him. Kill him before he kills you. But Nguyen Van Kok was disciplined. 60 seconds in a fight, never longer. No repeating patterns, no engagements unless the math favored him. December 1967, kills 6 and 7. December 28, 1967, kills 8 and 9. Double ace. 9 confirmed victories. The deadliest fighter pilot of the entire Vietnam War. He was 25 years old. After 1969, Nguyen Van Kok never flew combat again. North Vietnam pulled him off the front lines. His new mission, training the next generation of pilots. He survived the war, retired in 2002 as Chief Inspector of the Vietnamese Air Force. But what he proved echoed far beyond Vietnam's borders. Operation Bolo and the MiG ambush tactics it spawned led directly to the founding of the US Navy Fighter Weapons School in 1969. You know it as Top Gun. Turns out the dogfight wasn't dead. A farmer's son in an outdated aircraft had made that unmistakably clear. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and leave a like.